Yahweh, thank you so much for this time. Thank you for your word. Thank you for your spirit, which is so obviously here today. And thank you for a nice, safe, even tea-free place to worship and to enjoy your word. Please speak to us. If there's anything that I'm about to say that is not of you, I pray I would just forget it. It would mind blank. We want to just pour out your gift of teaching that your people, your shepherd, your sheep would be well fed. In Yeshua's name, amen. Okay, so we're in Vayeshev. Vayeshev is he lived and he dwelt. And we got, okay, we're up. And this message is entitled The Middle Part. And you guys will see why we're going to call that in just a minute. Nope, too far. Okay, so this portion starts out in Genesis 37, chapter 1. And Jacob settled in the land of the sojourning of his fathers. So he settled, he lived, he dwelt in the land of the sojourning of his father, in the land of Canaan. And these are the generations of Jacob. Joseph. We'll get to that in just a second. Joseph, when 17 years old, was shepherding the flock with his brothers. So obviously we're transitioning into Joseph's story. I'm sure this is one of all of our favorite Torah portions. The story of Joseph is very special to all of us, not only because of what he did, but who he represents. And the rabbis like to point out that the narrative does this, because usually if you hear these are the generations of, usually follows with and so begot so-and-so and begot so-and-so, usually has a list. Well, there's no list, there's just Joseph here. And they say that because he's the most important character at this moment, okay? The other guys are all important, everyone has a role, but he's the most important character right now. And of course, he's gonna be contrasted in this Torah portion with Judah, okay? We're not gonna spend any time on that this morning. You guys know the story. And I will say that while Judah would eventually lead the nation, it's Joseph that's gonna lead the family. And he's gonna do that by saving them from the famine, from the starvation that's coming. Okay, and you might ask, well, why is Joseph leading the family? Shouldn't it be Simeon? He's the one after Reuben, but apparently succession goes from firstborn to firstborn. And Reuben was the firstborn of the first wife. Joseph was the firstborn of the second wife. So firstborn to firstborn. And another important thing to remember right here is what shows us that Joseph is 17 years old at this moment. Picking up in verse 2, now he was a helper with the sons of Bilhah and the sons of Zilpah, the wives of his father. And Joseph brought a bad report to them, to their father. Now, Israel loved Joseph more than all his sons, for he was the son of his old age, and he made a robe with long sleeves for him. When his brothers saw that the father loved him more than all his brothers, they hated him and were not able to speak peaceably to him. So Joseph's in the field. While he's in the field with his brothers, he notices some unauthorized activity and he reports it. I guess he doesn't know what happens to snitches. Anybody remember? Snitches get stitches and end up in ditches or holes without any water in them. So he has that against him. He also has the fact that he's dad's favorite. We're not going to talk about that today. I think there's been enough said about Jacob's favoritism. The thing I want to highlight here is how his brothers felt about him. And when you cannot speak peaceably to somebody, that's bad. And he didn't just have one brother, he had them all. He was an equal opportunity offender. So, but in this, he was a lot like Jacob, because Jacob had a brother that hated him. And that brother's hatred and anger dictated the rest of his days, right? The rest of his future. Still dictating his future, right? And Joseph has the same problem. His brothers hate him, and their actions are going to dictate his future as well. Well, as if that wasn't enough, then the dreams start. So if you pick up in verse 5, it says, and Joseph dreamed a dream, and he told it to his brothers, and they hated him even more. And he said to them, listen now to the dream that I dreamed. Now behold, we were binding sheaves in the midst of the field. And behold, my sheaf stood up, and it remained standing. Then behold, your sheaves gathered around and bowed down to my sheaf. Then his brothers said to him, will you really reign over us? I think they already knew that he was going to lead the family because his father was already taking him aside. His father was already starting to train him. He had set him apart with the robe. They already knew who was going to lead the family. But I don't think they were going to submit to it. Nobody, no older brother is going to let a younger brother tell him what to do. Right, Brandon? Yeah, he'll probably be your boss one day. Anyway, then his brothers said to him, will you really reign over us? Or will you truly rule over us? And they hated him even more on account of his dream and because of his words. And of course, if one was good, then two is better, right? So in verse 9, we're going to see that he dreamed yet another dream and told it to his brothers. And he said, behold, I dreamed a dream again. And behold, the sun and the moon and the 11 stars were bowing down to me. And he told it to his father and to his brothers. And his father rebuked him and said to him, what is this dream that you have dreamed? Will I and your mother and your brothers indeed come to bow down to the ground to you? And his brothers were jealous of him, but his father kept the matter in mind. So what are these two dreams communicating? Anyone want to help? What are they communicating? Purpose. Joseph has a purpose, and the purpose, he's starting to get a look at that purpose from the dreams that he's having, all right? Remember, he's only 17 years old. Who in this room is 17? Raise your hand. I figure they're mostly over here. Who's 17? Ryan. Get your hand up. Mom says you're 17. You're not 17? All right, well, whatever. Okay, so I see some other 17-year-olds. God's not talking to you, man. It's your fault. No, I'm not actually in control of that. So we have a few 17-year-olds. You guys are not too young to start hearing what he has to say to you. Now, if you'll put the phone and the Xbox controller down, you might actually hear something from him. And they all tune out at this point. Not today. Well, don't forget that Samuel was even younger, so if you're actually younger than 17, there's hope for you too. But what are these dreams actually trying to show him? Well, it's pretty obvious that the family will be bowing down. We see the brothers bowing down in one, and we see mom, dad, and the brothers bowing down in the second. So that's the easy answer. What's it trying to show him? But what else are these dreams trying to show? What do we see in the first dream besides them bowing down? Sheaves, right? What do sheaves bear? Grain, okay? I believe barley grows in sheaves also, okay? But grain. Is grain an important part of Joseph's purpose? Oh, yeah. Yeah, so he can say, well, okay, people are going to be bowing down. Grain's going to have a part in this. But what else is this showing us? There's another symbol in here, another set of symbols in here. You see it? Sun, the moon, and the 11 stars, right? Well, what do the sun, the moon, and 11 stars refer to? Well, it's obviously mom, dad, and his brothers, but what else does it refer to? What's that? Moedim? Well, I like that answer. Genesis 1:14 says, let there be lights in the dome of the sky and divide the day from the night. Let them be for signs, for seasons, for days, and for years. How many years are we talking about here? Sun, moon, 11 stars. Jeremy, I need help. What is that? 13. Okay, 13 years, right? Well, if Joseph is 17, how old will he be when 13 years go by? 30. Genesis 41:46, and Joseph was 30 years old when he stood before Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and he left Pharaoh's presence and traveled through the land of Egypt. That verse is when he had just finished interpreting Pharaoh's dream. So he knows a number of things here. He knows that it's going to involve bowing down. It's going to involve grain. It's going to be 13 years from now. And you could probably add dreams because dreams are going to be a reoccurring thing with him. He dreamed, the butler dreamed, the baker dreamed, Pharaoh dreamed. Dreamed. Jeremy did that. I did not do that. Dream, dream, dream. Anyway, it would happen in 13 years and it would involve all those things. Now, in truth, we only know this because we know the whole story. And we've been reading this over and over and over every year, right? How much of this did Joseph understand when he was 17? Probably nothing. I think he probably liked the idea of his brothers bowing down. That was probably pretty special. But the rest of it, I'm sure he didn't understand it. How much do you think he understood at 30? Somewhat more, okay? How much do you think he knew at 39 when all of this was coming together? This came up in a conversation this week. I was talking with somebody, I won't mention them who, but we were talking about prophecy. And he was trying to figure out, what's this and what's this and what's this? And I was like, I don't know. All I remember is that sometime a long time ago, I remember hearing some guy say that prophecy is like red flags sticking out of the mist. They attract your eye, grain, dreams, 13 years, bowing. But until the mist clears, the rest is kind of a mystery, right? You just have to sort of walk through it and wait for it. Prophecy is always best interpreted after the fact, but you can't read any books at that point. Yep. Well, there was a portion of this prophecy that Yah completely left out. What was it? The middle part. It's always the middle part. You look at Abraham's life and he said, go. He didn't tell him anything that happened after you arrive. He didn't even tell him where he was going. He told Jacob, go get a wife. So he goes. He didn't tell him how long he was going to be there or what was going to transpire. He didn't tell him any of those things. You see, if he tells us the middle part, we won't do it, right? Yeah. I'm putting up this image for you. Now, you may notice that when I do teach, I like mental visual images, right? I blame my great aunt for that. A long time ago, she was very instrumental in us getting a house. And so once we got the house and we got moved in, she came to visit, older lady. And it was a joy to have her. It was a pleasure to have her. And then when she left, she said, now every time I see you, I'll know where you are. Well, she's with the Father right now. And I think it's only fair that she invite me to see her house so that I can think of her. When I think of her, I know what to see. But that always that stuck with me for some reason. I've always liked mental images since I understood that. And so here's an image. What's it conveying? Anybody? Yeah, a crossing, right? There's the people on the cliff. That's like Joseph when he's 17. And that's when you're seeing the vision. And then all the way across on the far side is when the vision happens. But we don't know what's in the middle. Matter of fact, we wouldn't know how to get over there from here. I can't get there from here, right? And that's what the middle part is about. And that's why I called that's why this sermon is titled The Middle Part, because we're going to talk about the middle part from here on out. Now, what was the middle part for Joseph? Well, we're going to pick up in verse 18, chapter 37, verse 18. It's going to start with the betrayal of his brothers. It says that now when they saw him far off, you'll remember kind of how this story goes, right? Jacob wanted a report on his brothers, on how the flocks were doing. And so he sends Jacob out it's too many J's in here. He sends Joseph out to go get the report. And Joseph, of course, can't find his brothers, but he meets up with a curious man. And the curious man, which we're not going to talk about today, very, very interesting, very interesting. Ask me in Midrash, I'll tell you, I don't know. Now, I guess you don't have to ask. But he meets a curious man who sends him to Dothan, and sure enough, there's his brothers. So that's really where this picks up. When they saw him afar off, how did they recognize him? That doggone coat. Oh, look who's coming, right? Even before he came near them, they conspired against him to kill him. Then they said to one another, look, this dreamer is coming Come therefore, let us now kill him and cast him into some pit. And we shall say, some wild beast has devoured him. We shall see what will become of his dreams. So we understood that they hated him, but look at that last line, especially. We shall see what will become of his dreams. You see, they didn't just want to kill him, they wanted to crush his vision. They were in opposition to him doing what Yah had set him apart to do. Amen? Now, if you or I are starting to see visions, if we're starting to get glimpses of the red flags of our purpose in the mist, we should probably expect to be opposed as well. And what I want you to do right now is don't point at anybody, but just look around. Because if our life plays out like Joseph's life, then the opposition will probably be somebody in this room or somebody close to you. Live streamers, you're safe today. Look around. Your opposition may be right here in this room. That's encouraging. Thanks for that. Well, what motivated the opposition? Well, I'll give you some quotes from a book I love. Right? This is from the Testimony of the 12 Patriarchs. Now, this book was found in the Dead Sea Scrolls. Well, I should say fragments of this book was found in the Dead Sea Scrolls. So if it was in the Dead Sea Scrolls, then it was in the library, in my opinion. It was in the library of the priesthood in exile, the true priesthood, because Rome had come in and taken over. And anyway, you know the story of Qumran. This was found in that group. So allegedly, what this book is talking about is the deathbed testimony of each of the patriarchs. It's as they were getting ready to pass into the next world that they called their family together, just like their father Jacob did, and they would share the sum total of their wisdom. It's a really great read. It doesn't, whether you believe it's actually their words or not, there's a lot of wisdom in this book. Well, this is from the testimony of Simeon. It's in the first part, chapter 1, verses 6 through 8. For in the time of my youth, I was jealous in many things of Joseph because my father loved him beyond all. Does that kind of coincide with what we've been reading today? Okay. And I set my mind against him to destroy him because the prince of deceit sent forth the spirit of jealousy and blinded my mind so that I regarded him not as a brother, nor did I spare even Jacob, my father. See, he was so jealous and that the enemy was able to come in, right? And really take that little spark and just blow it into a flame. And he said, it blinded me to the fact that this man was my brother and that his death would just absolutely destroy my father. He didn't care. He was so jealous and so angry. And so, anyway, but his God and the God of his fathers sent forth his angel and delivered him out of my hands. So Simeon was a dangerous guy, right? We know what happened in Shechem when Simeon and Levi, Simeon will go on in this book to describe how his jealousy and his anger was unrighteous, all right? As opposed to Levi's, who was different. We don't have time to get into that right now. But that's Simeon's testimony, and then this is Dan's testimony. I confess, therefore, this day to you, my children, that in my heart I resolved on the death of Joseph, my brother, the true and good man. So you realize he's much older now. Obviously, he's learned. And so he realizes his faults, and he realizes my brother was never in the wrong. I was. And I rejoice that he was sold because his father loved him more than us. For the spirit of jealousy and vainglory said to me, thou thyself also art his son. And one of the spirits of Beliar stirred me up, saying, take this sword and with it slay Joseph. You see something common here? Yeah. So shall thy father love thee when he's dead. There's a great lie, right? I'll kill your son and then you'll love me more. I don't think it works that way, but that's the lie. Now this is the spirit of anger that persuaded me to crush Joseph as a leopard crusheth a kid. But the God of my fathers did not suffer him to fall into my hands so that I should find him alone and slay him. and cause a second tribe to be destroyed in Israel. The thing I see in both of these accounts was jealousy fueled by the evil one, the enemy, okay? And that even though these men were dangerous, Joseph was never in any danger because he had a protector. The God of my fathers did not suffer him to fall. They both say the same exact thing. That means that this thing that was happening between Joseph and his brothers was allowed. Not necessarily encouraged, but if you think back to what happened to Job, the enemy came in to make an accusation, right? And the father said, okay, but you can't kill him. And they didn't. But they did get rid of him. You guys know the story. So this was allowed, and this process didn't just work in Joseph's life, it worked in Dan and Simeon's life. See, the father's the only one that can take something this awful and turn it around for good. They learned from this. They repented from this. I wish I had time to read more of it. These are short reads. And they're in the Safari app. Should you be curious to go take a look at it for yourself. But if this process was at work in Joseph's life, it may very well be at work in our life. You see, the person who would oppose us will probably be jealous. And that jealousy will probably open the door for the enemy to make an accusation that will allow a process to begin in his life and in mine, or our lives. And we have to be okay with that. We have to be okay with that. You know, if you're seeing glimpses of your purpose, almost expect it. Count on opposition, but know that through all of that opposition, you are not in any danger. You are not in any danger. You will complete your purpose. So we're going to pick up from here in verse 23. So it came to pass when Joseph had come to his brothers that they stripped Joseph of his tunic, the tunic of many colors that was on him, and they took him and cast him into a pit, and the pit was empty. There was no water in it. Well, I got to read from here. And they sat down to eat a meal, and they lifted their eyes and looked, and there was a company of Ishmaelites coming from Gilead with their camels, bearing spices, balm, and myrrh, on their way to carry them down to Egypt. So Judah said to his brothers, what profit is there if we kill our brother and conceal his blood? You see the enemy working here, right? Okay, I can't kill him, but I can get rid of him. Come and let us sell him to the Ishmaelites, and let not our hand be upon him, for he is our brother and our flesh. And his brothers listened. Then the Midianite traders passed. Then Midianite traders. So they came up with the idea when the Ishmaelites were coming by, but they didn't sell him until the Midianites came by. So the Midianite traders passed by. So the brothers pulled Joseph up and lifted him out of the pit and sold him to the Ishmaelites. Wait a minute. That's really confusing, isn't it? For 20 shekels of silver, and they took Joseph to Egypt. The rabbis attempt to explain this. I'm going to say, I don't know what that means. Ishmaelites, Midianites, termites, whatever. They sold him to somebody. And off he went. So this is the next part of what happens. Not only is he betrayed, but he's going to be betrayed into what? Slavery, right? Slavery, right? Hard labor, no pay, no options. Joseph lived like this for 10 or 11 years, somewhere in there. 10 to 11 years. And I think that if you're seeing glimpses of your past, of your future, I should say, of your purpose, of your calling, then you might also experience what Joseph is experiencing. You might also experience a time where you're on a very short leash, where he keeps you very, very close to him. Okay, you're still eating every day, you're still living indoors, you got clothes on, but you're not doing much else. Anyone living like that right now? Finances aren't great, working super hard, not really getting much done, but we're waiting. You know, Denise and I, when we've lived in and out of this situation for most of our lives, and we have this joke that goes, as long as there's coffee and wine, we're good. Amen? Raise your hand. Oh, you've got wine in your cup. That's not fair. It's coffee. I know it's coffee. Yeah, I know. We joke about the coffee and the wine. So there may not be vacations. You may be driving a car with bald tires. You may be driving a car where there's multiple lights blinking on the dashboard that are saying, fix me, fix me, fix me. And yet somehow the car just keeps rolling. Yeah. Lots of warning lights on the dash. One of the lessons in this phase is contentment, okay? Being able to be content with a little, okay? And Paul has something to say about that in Philippians 4. He says, not that I speak in regard to need, for I have learned in whatever state I am to be content. I know how to be abased, and I know how to abound. Everywhere and in all things I have learned to be learned both to be full and to be hungry, both to abound and to suffer need. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Now, I know we recognize that last line, but do we remember that it has to do with contentment? You know, it's not I can do all things. It's not a superpower. Well, it kind of is a superpower of contentment, right? In times when you might be on a short leash, because at this phase of the game, of the middle part, you don't go very far. You stay really close. And you learn this lesson. The other lesson, I think, is work ethic. It's a common meme. You guys have seen it all over. What this says really isn't that important. But one of the things that we also have to learn, one of the things that Joseph had to learn was a work ethic. All right? Because when you're a slave, you don't get to just quit because it's hot or miserable or boring. Isn't that our kid's favorite word? I don't want to do this chore, it's boring. Suck it up. It's about staying at a task. And some people view ministry as an inside job with air conditioning, lots of unaccountable time, and very little heavy lifting. And so it's very attractive for those reasons. At least it was to me a long time ago. I come in when I want, I leave when I want, I take long lunches, 3-day weekends. Some people get into that mindset, and that is not what we aspire to. That is not what Yah needed to save the world from starvation and to keep Israel on the path to fulfilling the covenant. That is not what he needed. He doesn't need that kind of, I don't think he needs that kind of person anyway. I came from a denomination where people looked at the ministry that way. And those people, well, I should say, got into trouble. Okay? Don't ask me how I know that. Okay? We do not aspire to that. Joseph learned diligence to his calling through slavery. He learned to stay at a task and to complete it. He learned to do, not just stay in his lane, okay, but serve with a heart that wants to work hard. We need more of that, not less. Preach. The next phase of Joseph's development was temptation. You can go over to Genesis 39 and pick up in verse 6. Now, Joseph was handsome in form and appearance. Where do you suppose he got that from? Mama, right? She was, beautiful in face and figure. He was handsome in form and appearance, and it came to pass after these things that his master's wife cast longing eyes on Joseph, and she said, lie with me. Now, you'll notice I chose to forego a mental image for this one. We're going to keep it rated G in here, all right? But here's the truth that we have to kind of recognize, is that not only will we be probably opposed, not only will we probably have to learn to work hard and be content, but we're going to have to know how to deal with temptation. And you can't learn to overcome if there's nothing to overcome. Right? Okay? So we have to be tested. Now let me talk about testing for just a second here. Yah has no need to test us because he already knows what's going on in our heart. He knew it before we were born. He knew it from the foundation of the earth. All right, so it's not that he has to test us, but we do continue to use this word because it makes sense to us. You know, we have to go to a class, we have to learn what the teacher teaches, and then we have to get tested on the material, right? Okay. But when Yah tests, it's not so much a test, it's an opportunity for a testimony. I do not do Pentecostal well. I was not raised in it. There's probably a more Pentecostal way to say that. I just didn't accomplish it. I worked so hard at that too. Anyway, glory. Hebrews 12 tells us that we are surrounded by a great cloud of witnesses, right? Does Hebrews 12 tell us that? Okay. They're not an audience, and they're not cheering fans. What are they? They're witnesses, right? They are watching to see what's going to happen. Okay? It's a courtroom, not a stadium. And those witnesses saw Joseph pass this test right here many times. And once they saw that, then they could testify of it, and that testimony was recorded in the book. And what's going to happen at the end? The books are going to be opened. And what is Joseph's book going to say? What? You passed. Well done. What else? Well done, good and faithful. Yeah, that's what he's going to say. And then some of the rest of our books may have some mixed testimony. Right? It's a little bit of a terrifying thought. So why is temptation a necessary part of our training? Well, here's Paul's take on it. Therefore, to keep me from becoming overly proud, I was given a thorn in my flesh, a messenger from the adversary to pound away at me. I think this is the complete Jewish version. I kind of like that pounding part. So that I wouldn't grow conceited. 3 times I begged the Lord to take this thing away from me, but he told me, my grace is enough for you, and my power is brought to perfection in weakness. I thought it was kind of interesting that when Adam and Eve sinned, he said, you know what? Food isn't going to grow for you like it used to. But what will grow? Thorns and thistles, right? We chose to sin, and suddenly we're surrounded by thorns. What do thorns do? I mean, yeah, ow, good, okay. They grab, they scratch, they cut, they pierce, they penetrate, they get under our skin, especially the ones on those green things that just grow, those green vines that just grow everywhere, and you can chop them down and you can burn them and they just grow right back. I hate those things. I like the blackberries a little bit better, at least they have fruit on them. About the same effect though. And once you get one of those under your skin, you just can't really forget that it's there, can you? Have you had a temptation like that? Yes, you don't have to raise your hands. I know you all have. I have, many of them. Had temptations that I just couldn't, it was like, ow, leave me alone. Go away, get out, leave me alone. You know, you rebuke it. You try to think of something else. You do whatever you have to do, but it just won't leave you alone, like the thorn under your skin and the scratches and all the other stuff. But the truth is that those thorns bring humility. That's what he's saying, right? The thorns, they pound away at him, driving out conceit, like a rod drives foolishness out of a child. It's kind of the same concept, right? And you'll notice he says, please take this thing away from me. And he says, my grace is good. My grace is enough for you. Grace implies what? Failure. When are you the most humble? When you have failed miserably, right? No, that's not just me. Okay, good. I see lots of head shaking. Makes me feel better. If grace is involved, that implies failure. It's not endorsing failure. It's not encouraging failure, but it's saying that when failure happens, my grace is there. My grace is there to cover that while you learn or while conceit is driven out of you. And what's the goal of the thorn? What's the goal of this process? Weakness. weakness. Because when we are finally weak, then he is strong, right? And we have to break it down. We have to be broken down. That's the goal, is weakness. That's not attractive. Nobody wanted to be voted most likely to be weak in high school, okay? Nobody aspires to weakness, but maybe we should think about it. Because at this point in Joseph's life, as a slave, who's being constantly tested, who has no freedom, who can't leave the house, I don't know that it was a great comfort that he was in charge of everything. But every day as he's in charge, this woman is chasing him down like a thorn. Lie with me, lie with me, lie with me. But it was in his weakness. And how did that weakness express itself in Joseph's life? He was willing to run away from a girl, all right? Not another thing we aspire to as men, right? Running away from girls, running away naked. Yeah, it's kind of an interesting picture if you sit there and let it marinate, ruminate. Now, you guys are going to be happy because we'll be done early. The next phase of Joseph's development in the middle part is false accusation. And Potiphar accuses him of what? Four-letter word, starts with R, rape. And isn't it interesting how we see that in the news all over the place today? It's the easiest way to cut a man down, especially if it's false. Okay, I'm not going to get into this much because the next phase after that is prison, all right? Finally, Joseph went to prison. Prison, long, dramatic pause while you look at the picture and imagine yourself in prison. Okay, I'm putting another image up for you. All right? I'm giving you this image because we kind of need it. Because I'm sure at this point, some of you are thinking, I don't want a vision. I don't want a dream. I don't want a calling. I'm going to be under my bed with my blankie waiting for the rapture. If that's you, what I want you to do is just breathe and look at the AI-generated puppies. Okay? Think happy thoughts. And if you're a glutton for punishment, don't look at the picture and think of lots of good ways to discuss this in Midrash. Okay? Okay, and I'm about to close with this. So back to business. Purpose. We talk a lot about purpose here at Jacob's Tent, about functioning in our purpose, all right? And this Torah portion is all about purpose too. It's all about purpose. And it's about Joseph's purpose and his preparation for the calling that Yah has put on his life. And here's what I want to encourage you with. Funny encouragement. If you're here right now, it's because you have a purpose, right? Does anybody agree with that? It's because you have a purpose. And your purpose is not to sit in a chair and then put a check in the plate. That's helpful, all right? But that's not your only purpose. Your purpose is to actually do something, right? And if you're a live streamer, you have a purpose too. And if you're a live streamer who is planning to come here to Cleveland, you need to know that you know that you know that you have a purpose here, okay? It's not just, oh, those people look so nice and it's so, they seem so friendly and I love the conferences and the worship is so good and teaching's good except when that other guy teaches and well, no, I mean me, not him. I'm the other guy. Okay, self-deprecation. If you think you're coming here, come here knowing that you're going to fulfill your purpose. Don't come here for any other reason, all right? Because we don't have room for you. As Bill has said, it's true. I'll say it and be the bad guy since I'm the other guy. But Bill said recently, there's no room for spectators right now, right? Do we still agree with that? Do you still think that? Yeah, okay. I still think that. Jerry, you think that? Yep, Jerry agrees with that. Where's Patrick? He's not here. Patrick agrees. Right? Because you know what? If you don't have a purpose here, even if your purpose is still future, if you don't have a purpose here, you won't last long. My wife likes to call this place a threshing floor. What happens on a threshing floor? Beating and separation, okay? That will happen here. If you plan on coming here, you're coming to the threshing floor, okay? I'm looking at you guys because that's who I'm talking to. And I'm just gonna call it like it is. You're coming to the threshing floor. Because everyone who comes here is tested almost immediately. Is there can I get a witness to that? Yeah. Put the camera so that you can see the hands raised of how many people came here and were immediately tested. Okay? Immediately. When you come here, for those who are planning, when you come here, he will give you every reason to leave, and many do. Okay? He will give us every reason to leave. But if you survive that, then you get to enter into the middle part. I'll let that sink in for a second. What does he talk? Oh, the Joseph stuff. Oh no, I don't want that. Get over it. You know, I started walking with the Lord when I was 11. I know I was a late bloomer. Some of you were way ahead of me at 11. And I continued on that path until I came to Torah when I was 46. And if I was to put my hands at some gap and say, this was how much I grew in that period, if you take the 5 years after I came to Torah, it's a much bigger gap. It's a much bigger, I grew this much more in that 5 years. But when we came here, and we've been here now for 4 years, it's a much bigger line. So come here if you want to grow. Come here if you have a purpose. Come here if you are willing to enter into the middle part that could bring false accusation and other things, okay? But I tell you what, I wouldn't trade it for anything. Amen? Anybody else agree with that? Well, then make some noise, people. Don't fear the middle part. Don't be afraid of it. I'll close with this story. When I was in the Army, we jumped, okay? When I was in the Army, we jumped out of airplanes. That's what we did. That's not a big deal, okay? It's not like, ooh, you jumped out of an airplane. It's not that. I didn't look forward to the jumps, mostly because I got motion sick. So I got sick every jump. And while I was barfing, while I was getting sick, shouldn't say that word, I was also going through my mind, why am I doing this? Why is this a good idea? Why did I sign up to do this? Again and again and again. But there was some point during the jump where we had to stand up. And there was a point when the jump master would lean back and hold up one finger. What is he saying, Mike? 1 minute. And then we knew it was time to go. And in a few seconds later, he would step back from the door and he'd put a jumper in the door and the green light would come on. And something happened to me every single time. The sickness passed, all the worry passed, and it was just like this peace and resolve came over me. And we headed for the door and we went out. And I landed every single time. Okay. Alive. Yeah. And I only told you this story for one reason. The green light's on, guys.